I've just finished my first month of ADHD medication, and honestly, it was not what I expected. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing what surprised me, what went the way I thought it would, and what really didn't, what's worked, what hasn't, and everything I've learnt along this crazy journey so far. If you're new here, hi, I am Ree from mummyof4.com. As the title of my website suggests, I have 4 children, all of which have autism, and earlier this year at age 40, I was diagnosed with ADHD. So it's been a whole journey. There's a whole playlist where you can learn all about what's been going on so far, if you haven't had time to catch up yet. I wasn't seeking a diagnosis at all because I felt I wanted medication. It was more to understand my own brain. And then during my diagnosis meeting, the doctor was very much, the next step is medication. And it kind of blindsided me a little bit that was just such a given, because really it wasn't what I thought I wanted. And then after reflecting and debating and actually listening to a lot of you guys in the comments, it made me realise that actually if it was a different type of ailment, I wouldn't be so, I don't need medication. Perhaps I was being a little closed-minded and not at least giving it a try. And while on the outside, if you've watched my channel for a while, I appear to, function quite well. I think what people don't see are the internal struggles and the effort it takes me in order to keep everything running smoothly. The constant battling with myself. And while I do have a lot of systems in place, after many years of trying to hack mum life, which it turns out I may have just been trying to hack ADHD all along, I came to the conclusion that I wanted it to at least give it a try to see how much of a difference it made. I was nervous about some of the side effects, which you will have known if you watched my first week on ADHD medication video. But over this last month, I've realised quite a lot, which I'm going to share with you, but not before reminding you, quick disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. Even if I was a doctor, I wouldn't be your doctor. So this information, along with anything else you find on the internet from anyone, whether they're sharing personal experiences or expert advice, is not personal advice tailored to you. So if you think you have any symptoms of ADHD, think of taking any medication at all, please consult your own doctor. Please do that. So even though I'm sure this video will be valuable, please just do speak to your own doctor as well. And you have to remember that my experience is just that. It's my experience. Everyone's ADHD is different. How everyone reacts to medication is different, which I guess is why it was kind of fascinating for me to watch lots of these videos before I started the medication, and now to share with you my take on what's happened with me. So I had quite a few concerns before starting the medication. Ultimately, the aim of any medication is to improve your quality of life, and that the benefits should outweigh the negatives. So I was kind of worried about some of the extensive side effects that are listed in the medication, while equally reminding myself that most medications come with quite extensive lists, even things like the contraceptive pill that so many of us have taken over the years. So things I was worried about. Feeling sleepy. Although the ADHD medication is technically a stimulant, for some people with ADHD it can actually make them sleepy. Obviously, as a mum of 4 who works for herself and tries to fit in all the things, I didn't want to be sleepy. I want to be able to get more done, not less, and being sleepy would completely defeat the object. So I was really nervous about that. Also, disturbed sleep. My sleep is so precious to me, and I think I realised this when all my babies were newborns, that sleep is such a precious commodity. And I came up with strategies way back when they were newborn to help me fall asleep very quickly. Because I knew that when they were babies, when they were asleep, I didn't want to be lying there awake, wasting that opportunity to sleep, and then ultimately feeling horrendously tired in the mornings. Because for anyone that's ever dealt with that newborn haze of feeling like a zombie all the time, it's not pleasant. So I really didn't want to go back to that. I was quite nervous about sleeplessness. I'd heard that a lot of people can be made to feel anxious by the medication, and obviously that's not something I fancied at all. And although this one wasn't actually listed as a side effect, I kind of come to the conclusion that a lot of my creative ideas were maybe not necessarily because of my ADHD, but maybe the way that my ADHD brain works helps me come up with these creative ideas for different things that I do in my business. It makes me good at problem solving. And I think I was worried about some of that being kind of dampened down or snuffed out. Now, I've got to say, I have not felt sleepy, which is amazing. Thank goodness. I know in that first 7 days of ADHD medication, I did have a couple of nights where I did struggle to sleep, but it was also a very warm week, a very, very warm week. So this is why, if you watched that video, I said that I think that 7 days is not enough to really see how something is going to work. And from that point of view, even after 30 days, I feel like I need to keep observing how things are going, keep notes, keep making diary entries about the benefits and the side effects I'm having, because there can be other environmental factors that are going to have an impact on how you're feeling day to day. So during that first 7 days, yeah, it definitely could have been the medication keeping me awake. But then after that, when the weather cooled down, I didn't say I had any problems falling asleep. Like I mentioned, I have a lot of strategies to help me fall asleep quickly because my mind races, and it's always been something I've struggled with. But that's something for a separate video. Let me know if you want me to share a video about strategies that I use for things like falling asleep with ADHD, because I could talk about that all day too. I've got to say, I didn't notice my anxiety levels changing at all. I wouldn't consider myself a super anxious person on most days, although we all have times where we worry about things more than others. It's not one of my main struggles, I would say. And I think during that first 7 days, one thing I noticed was I was so hyper aware of how I was feeling all the time. I think it was a little bit of the observer effect, where the fact that I knew I was taking something made me observe my behaviour, and I wonder how much of that had an impact on my day-to-day behaviour. Therefore, I was just so hyper aware of how I was feeling. Was that in turn changing how I was feeling? Somewhere between the observer effect and a placebo. I think over these 30 days, I've definitely chilled out, and I'm not so hyper aware of how I'm feeling, and I'm not so on the lookout for symptoms. Perhaps then I've stopped seeing things that potentially weren't there or weren't that big a deal. And I wouldn't say my creativity has been stifled. So enough of the things I didn't actually notice, so I didn't really notice any of the things that I was worried about, which is very positive. So the negative side effects have been really minimal. On to some things I did actually notice. During the time where I was taking the medication, I would say I felt less distracted. I would not say that it was a transformation. I would not say it was super dramatic, nor would I say that it was consistent from day to day. So some days I would take the medication and I would feel like I could easily slip into a hyperfocus, even though it wasn't something interesting enough that would normally draw me into a hyperfocus. And if you're totally new to the ADHD world, then people with ADHD often struggle to focus on things unless they are really, really interested in them. And then you can slip into a hyperfocus where the rest of the world falls away and you forget to do things like, eat, sleep, go to the toilet. My hope for the medication, I suppose, was to meet in that kind of middle point where it didn't have to be something that was super, super interesting and engaging, and I'd be able to turn on my ability to focus even when things are more boring or mundane, which are the tasks that historically I struggle to focus on because I'm just like, oh, this is so boring. I know I need to redesign my whole website. It's like, no, you don't need to redesign your whole website. You just need to do the boring task because that's the thing that needs to be done. So I think I did feel less distracted at times. But like I said, I'm not really starting from scratch here. Although I was only recently diagnosed with ADHD, I have been working hard on trying to hack mum life, hack my productivity, stay more focused, and overcome what I just thought was my mum brain for many years now. Like the whole time that I've been working on this channel and sharing through my blog and things, it's been all about how to make mum life easier. And really, I guess what I was trying to do was make overwhelmed ADHD mum life easier. Does that mean the tips don't work for neurotypical people? No. I mean, a lot of the stuff I share generally will help anyone that has really got their hands full and is feeling a little overwhelmed. If you've got ADHD, it just might really speak to you a lot more. So really, since I was pregnant with baby number 2, who is now who is now 12, and my height, maybe a tiny bit taller if I'm honest. Since I was pregnant with him, and I thought, wow, I'm only just holding it together with one child. If I don't get my act together now, I'm going to be in trouble. And I really started looking for more and more strategies. And then with every baby, kind of ramped up my research for how I can make things go more smoothly, how I can make my life easier, how I can become more organized. I've got so many things in place in my life that although the effects of the medication may seem mild, in that they're helping me focus in on especially boring work tasks I normally struggle with, I've already got stuff in place that helps me stay focused, such as my walking pad, such as my planners, such as the way I've got my office set up. So yes, the effects have been mild, but then you've got to remember this is a very low dose. They start you on a very low dose and kind of work up if necessary from there. So the impact has been quite mild in that I have felt marginally less distracted during my work sessions. Equally, the side effects have been negligible. One thing I have noticed is medication kind of works in the same way that lots of caffeine does. I'm not really a tea or coffee drinker, but there are certain energy drinks, and in fact I used to have a bit of a Diet Coke habit. I'm trying to cut back on that because apparently it's not the best for you. Not that I'm cutting it out altogether, I'll have you know, because I do enjoy my occasional Diet Coke, but really I was kind of living on the stuff at one stage. I'm now kind of into a couple of other allegedly more healthy energy drinks. But long story short, I think I was always drawn to those kind of drinks and those caffeine kind of products because of the way it kind of makes my brain, how do I describe it? Kind of more tunnel vision, more focused, more like, it's like caffeine kind of quiets the noise a little bit. And this medication feels kind of like being heavily caffeinated, and not necessarily in a jittery or anxious way, which is a way that some people kind of seem to react to caffeine. I associate feeling caffeinated with feeling more productive, and this kind of has that same feeling. I wonder if this is making any sense at all. I have noticed that perhaps it does elevate my heart rate slightly. Nothing major, nothing worrying, nothing kind of alarming, but I have observed that the medication does have that like raising my heart rate marginally effect. Of course, the way I've been taking medication has changed a little from summer to now that the children have started school. And this is obviously going to have quite a big impact. So I'm on the long release version where you just take one capsule per day. If you want the full details of the exact medication I'm taking and all of the specific side effects, instructions and things that came along with that medication, then check out my first 7 days of ADHD medication video where I go into that in a lot more depth. But in the interest of not repeating myself, I'm just going to say on this video that is the long release version, which is just once a day. So the way that my doctor described it to me was that I would need to take the medication with breakfast. She said with a large breakfast. I have kind of learnt through research from other places that a protein heavy breakfast is better, apparently because it helps to deliver the medication slowly. And this just makes good sense to have a high protein breakfast anyway, from an energy level point of view, so that your energy is delivered slowly rather than like a big burst followed by a crash. So she suggested having this big breakfast, taking it with breakfast. And then she said that I would just be a lot more focused for 6 to 8 hours and then be back to as my normal self after that. So during the summer, the children were home and obviously I still had to work, but I didn't have any childcare. So I was still getting up at my normal time, which if you've seen my morning routine videos, my alarm goes off at 5. Whereas normally I would come down and do some yoga, some Pilates, plan for the day, journaling, and kind of get my head space right. And that's kind of my normal before school routine. And then I would get the children ready, take them to school, and then start my work day. During the summer, I had to kind of switch that around more and utilize that time where the children were actually sleeping in a lot later, and so was my husband because his work schedule was different too. And I had those quiet hours and I really had to maximize those for work time, because ultimately I can do Pilates and yoga with the children climbing all over me, but I find it much harder to focus and concentrate on certain work, especially writing, editing, things that really need quiet. I struggle to do that a lot more when the children are awake. So during the summer, I was coming straight down at 5, getting straight on the computer and getting on with work. So I was taking my medication really early. I was actually eating a cereal bar very first thing in the morning when I got up straight away so that I could take my medication. I really like the Nature Valley ones. None of those are sponsored, by the way. This is just what I've been doing, but I really like the Nature Valley protein bars, and I've been buying those in bulk online because they worked out a lot cheaper. Yeah, they're yummy, very breakfasty, and good amount of protein in them. So I was eating one of those at 5, taking my medication, and then hoping to feel the effects in that earlier part of the day where I had more time, more quiet time that I can actually work. The downside of this is somewhere between 11:30 and 1:30 the medication would wear off, and I'd be back to my finding it harder to focus and concentrate kind of self. So since the children have been back in school, I have been taking the medication after dropping them in school. So I've got those hours while they're in school in more of a normal work day where the medication is working. Obviously, I've got a much longer period of time where I can actually get things done. My days just look very different. So whereas in the summer I had a few hours of focused work, and then perhaps I was doing other things, I was with the children, I was playing with the children, we did a lot of swap things around in the house over the summer. We decorated our new garden room. We made over a Williams bedroom. There was a lot of that kind of stuff going on. So I felt that it was harder to gauge how much focus the medication was giving me when I wasn't having long periods where I was able to do work, where I had the opportunity to focus. Now that the children are back in school and my days are back to much more of a normal pattern, I think it is much better taking the medication during those kind of normal hours because I'm not noticing as much of a crash. I think I was noticing much more of a crash taking the medication earlier, and then noticing after it had worn off how much more I struggled to concentrate. And it was funny because on certain days I didn't notice, wow, I can concentrate so much now, but I noticed after it wore off, wow, I'm struggling to concentrate now. So it's almost like when the medication is working, my brain was working as it should have worked. And then after that, it was back to struggling a bit more and highlighting perhaps how I struggle a bit more. But I think it does suit me taking it later in the day and then having more of a natural ease off rather than it feeling like a crash so much in the afternoon or evening. Not that it felt like a crash every day, but I did notice it more days where I took the medication earlier. Now, could this just be that I was just using up more of my brain power? Is my brain power like my iPhone battery, and the more you use it earlier in the day, then the more drained it gets later in the day? I don't know. This is stuff I'm still kind of trying to learn about myself through this whole journey. One thing that did surprise me, I think, was, and I'm just going to put a little trigger warning here now because we are going to talk about slightly disordered eating. I think throughout my adult life and probably younger too, I have struggled a little with emotional eating in that I don't necessarily always eat because I am hungry, and if you are hungry, you should absolutely eat. However, you probably shouldn't eat because you are sad or bored or stressed or anything other than hungry. And if we all just ate when we were hungry and stopped when we were full, we'd all feel so much better in our bodies. And while I understand that concept, it is something I've struggled with over the years. And I know earlier this year I got into something of a rut with this cycle, and I'm not going to lie to you, I was eating entire Easter eggs to myself at my desk, sometimes multiple times a day. I'm not especially proud of that, but let's face it, it's what was happening. Now, even before taking the medication, I decided to have a bit of a health kick and bought my walking pad and thought, right, now I need to make healthier choices. And yes, I'm unlikely to be walking on my walking pad while also shoveling Easter egg into my mouth at the same time. So that did help. But the food noise was still there. And if you don't know what food noise is, then I'm really, really happy for you. But basically it's the, shall I go and eat something? Like the constant, shall I go and get some chocolate? Shall I go and get the chattering along in your brain? And I'm not talking about genuine hunger, because I had heard that ADHD medication will stifle your hunger, your natural hunger cues, and I haven't found that. I have found that my body has still told me when I'm hungry, and I've been able to go and feed myself when I'm hungry. But I think I'm getting less of the, oh, this is really boring, let's go and get some chocolate. The kind of whispering on my shoulder I would get from my own brain to go and sabotage myself because I was doing something that felt uncomfortable. I would say that the medication has helped to quiet that down, which is massive. I'm going to be honest, that's quite a big thing. So there were some days during the first month that we were away. We went on a Disney cruise. It was amazing. I have got a whole vlog series that's going out on my Mummy 4 Does Disney channel. If you love Disney content, travel content, all the magical vlogs, that kind of thing, then you'll love it. So please do check that out. But I wasn't sure if while we were away on our trip, I was going to bother to take the medication or not. Because although, yes, I mean, I was working because I filmed the whole vlog series, which is more work than I think typical people do on a holiday or vacation. But it wasn't computer work. I wasn't sitting at the computer needing to concentrate. Although it is totally possible to go on a Disney cruise and have a calm, relaxing, chilled time, that's not how my children like to do Disney cruises. They like to be like, go, 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 mummy, come on, come on, come on. And obviously we were out of our kind of normal routine, and you've got to find your own different groove and your different routine on holiday. So for me, routine helps because it automates things that makes me have to think less. So when we got there and everything was very messy, we hadn't spent much time in the room because we were out doing things. I did find that trying to logically figure out, right, what do I need first, then next, then after that? Do I need to tidy first? Do I need to sort children? Do I need to blah, blah, felt a lot. So I did take my medication in the mornings, and actually it did help. And I noticed that, oh my goodness, what should I be doing next? I don't know what I should be doing next. A lot more when we were away than I do at home. And I don't know if that was because we were busier and like a lot more of a tight time scale, and William wanted to get to watch this show, and blah, blah, blah. Will's like very keen, our 12-year-old, on getting to the next thing and not missing out on anything. But maybe it's just because I don't have that like automation going on like I do at home. At home, I've got alarms going off. I've got things that remind me. Everything is set up. Our whole environment, our whole house is set up to make life easier. And I guess when we're out of that environment, you don't have that. And you've got to think of your own processes because where is this thing? Oh, hang on, I don't know because it doesn't have a home because I don't live here. So I've got to figure that out. Was a bit more challenging. So while I didn't think I'd need to take the medication on holiday, I did end up taking it most mornings, and I found it did help, but in different ways than I noticed back home. Is that making any sense at all to anyone? So while the changes have been subtle, so have the side effects. So far I have no complaints, and I definitely can't see any downsides that I have personally experienced while taking this medication. And it doesn't mean that someone else taking the same medication wouldn't have dramatic, life-altering differences even on the same dose, because everyone reacts differently to things. And one thing I have observed is I feel like I have noticed different levels of impact of the medication fluctuating over different days. So some days I've barely noticed it doing anything at all and I feel like it isn't helping, and other days I kind of noticed it a lot more. So I guess that'll have to do with how much I've eaten, how I'm metabolizing things, how much exercise I've had, how much sleep I've had. All of that stuff is going to have an impact, which is why I really do feel like it needs to be even more than 30 days to really notice if this is the right thing for me, if it needs to be a little higher dose, if it's going to work long term, all that stuff. So I have done a few things to try and maximize my experience with the medication, and I've got to say a lot of this stuff is just good common sense advice that you should probably do whether you're taking the medication or not. One of them is hydration. I've always got my absolutely ridiculously large Stanley cup of water. I would say it's just water. It's actually ice and water and a tiny bit of sugar-free squash, because I'm a child and I'm far more likely to drink the water if it tastes good. So don't tell my children, because I just make them drink normal water and they do it fine. But yeah, I'm far more likely to drink that. It's got squash in it. Some people say that they struggle with remembering to drink when they're taking ADHD medication, or they can feel like they've got a very dry mouth. So obviously hydrating is super important. As I mentioned, I am trying to eat a fair amount of protein at breakfast, and eat that before I take my medication. Now, every medication's different. Some of them you're supposed to take on an empty stomach, some with a full stomach, some after. So read the leaflet on your specific medication and speak to your doctor. But for mine, that's what I'm supposed to do. But honestly, having a good high protein breakfast is just really good, sensible advice, which I need to be doing whether I'm taking medication or not. Another thing that I have been doing before taking medication, I continue to do, and it really, really helps, is utilising my planner, which when I designed this, I did not realise that I was designing it so specifically to work with my ADHD brain, but it absolutely does. There are 2 pages per day. There are half-hour blocks, so I can block in each half-an-hour segment exactly what I should be doing. I've got my 3 top priorities, so I know what to focus on, because sometimes otherwise I would sit at my desk and just be like, let's waste some time wondering what I should be doing, because I don't know, and that is not a good use of time. I've got my priorities, my to-dos, my time blocking, my knowing what I've got for dinner. There's also a meal plan in here. And then I've got my gratitude list, and also put in here, I should perhaps relabel this gratitude and wins, but this notes section, this is the one. I mean, you could just use a plain piece of paper, but it suits me to have it all in one place because it keeps all of my ideas. It's labeled notes, but really it should be called side quests, because what I tend to write in here is when I am at my desk, I'm working on something, I come up with this great idea, I'm terrified it's going to float away like a cloud and I'll not be able to remember what it is, so I just instantly want to stop what I'm doing and go and act out this idea and do it right now. I say to myself, no, write it down here. That's a side quest. Get back to what you should be doing. And then I can flick through and see all my great ideas when I'm having a planning session. Now, one thing I have noticed with the medication is I'm not having to fight with myself as much. Normally I'd be like, no, write it down, keep working, stop being distracted. And now most days when I'm taking the medication, it is just easier to jot it down in that note section and then come back to it later on. And obviously my walking pad, I've got my sit stand desk, and my walking pad really helped me to focus and concentrate. Something about having to use my subconscious mind to keep walking, stay on the treadmill, seems to quiet a little bit of the distraction and the noise in my brains. So whether you are taking ADHD medication or not, if you have ADHD or you struggle to concentrate, I would highly recommend that you check out this video on screen now about how I walked 100 miles in 30 days on my walking pad and the massive differences it made to me, plus another video on screen that I know you're going to find super helpful if you have ADHD. Thanks so much for watching. Check out my Patreon for some early release videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.